All righty, welcome. I am Heather Pierce Campbell, the legal website warrior. I'm an attorney and legal coach based here in Seattle, Washington, serving online information entrepreneurs throughout the US and the world. Welcome to another episode of Guts, Grit, and Great Business. I am super excited to welcome our guest, Olly Wood, today. Welcome, Olly.
Hey, Heather, really good to be on, and love the name, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Well, so good to be here. I love your name. It's unique. And I've really been looking forward to this conversation, in part, like so many of us, been going through my own health journey. But also it's just so true. And I think particularly in the journey of entrepreneurship, where so much can be on your shoulders, like you don't have your health, you don't have anything. Everything about the journey gets harder, right? So stick around. If you are tuning in today, you are in for a treat. We are going to be talking about all things health related, a lot about Olly's work and how he helps his clients really turn things around and make massive improvements in their health. If you don't know Olly Wood, after spending 20,000 hours working with busy professionals and business owners, Olly has become a well-known expert across New Zealand and Australia as the go-to coach for health and performance for busy professionals over 40. His unique approach is not just focused on dumbbells and calories, but rather using his unique R4 methodology to address mental, physical, and digestive stress to quickly get your body and energy back on your side in a simple, smarter way. So first of all, I'm like, simple and smarter. Who doesn't want that? But I feel like you might be selling me something. Kidding. But I am like, having like walked on this path for many years now, trying to figure this out, right? Sometimes it's hard to believe that it could be simple. Anyways, welcome, Olly. I'm super excited to dig in with you today.
Yeah, well, the big part we've just discussed with the business owner standpoint, one of the things that's certainly going down that path myself is how much that mental activity really impacts how your body works overall, right? So an awareness of, certainly in our 20s, we're made of rubber and magic and things tend to work. We just need to eat a couple less pizzas, a couple less beers, maybe go for a run and things start to work, right? But if you are noticing that the body's shifting, it's not responding like it used to, and you're a business owner on top of that, there's a level of cognitive load that really, I think for me, I had to go through to appreciate. And it is very much one of those, I need to touch the stove to realize it's hot kind of experiences where I started to realize how much that impacted my sleep, my digestion, my overall ability to show up. And that's something that just really, hopefully from today, allows us to go into more of a discussion around how you can approach being the athlete in regards to how you show up, how you conduct your day, so that you're actually recovering and you're not borrowing from tomorrow's energy. So wherever we need to go, that's kind of the goal.
I love it. Well, and also I want to mention, because I didn't cover it in your intro, that your business name is called Body Reset. And we'll be sure to share all the links. But I think, so many of us, and like you said, these cumulative effects, right, of life, living, maybe poor choices. And also sometimes I will say that in the space that I live in, like with quite aware, conscious people as my clients in my circles, etc., can also be the case that people are really trying hard to get it right, and they're still missing the boat.
Yep.
Right. So maybe we talk a little bit about that as well. But I think so many people, especially coming out the other side of COVID and the stresses that went along with that period, whether it was COVID illness related or just the stresses of other things piling on, are really understanding the connection between mindset and mental health and digestion, right? This whole issue of like getting the digestive system working the right way. I think that's been a painful lesson for a lot of people.
Totally. And simply the awareness that it's not what you eat, it's what you absorb that matters is something we talk about a ton. And it's a simple analogy that allows us to go into, if you're inhaling food in between meetings, you're flushing it down with another drink, you're not paying attention to your actual state. I think that's an area where certainly the clients we've worked with, that period allowed them to go through a little bit of self-discovery where they may have been relatively aware even emotionally, but certainly physically around how they went through their day. But it wasn't that deeper level of, I've just been running around like a headless chip for the last 4 hours. I haven't taken the time to breathe. I'm certainly not paying attention to the state when I eat, and an awareness of, even if it was your healthy salad that you have every day, being able to pay attention to the state when eating is going to have a pretty big difference. So simply taking 3, 4, or 5 deep breaths before a meal and doing that without a screen or a meeting just around the corner, I think a lot of people started to see benefit in realizing that there was a disconnection between, I'm eating the healthy foods, yet my body's not changing, or I'm feeling sluggish, even though I had an energy-filled meal, it's not working the same way. I think all of those just became I need to ask other questions here. As we said before, it's not calories and macros and dumbbells. It's an awareness of beyond thermodynamics, what are the parts that play a role in digestion? And I think when we're at an all-time high in a lot of these inflammatory conditions, everyone now seems to have IBS or IBD or something there with these digestive
Or
issues coming through.
autoimmune. Yes.
Yeah, it's massive. And I think realizing that it's not the healthy salad itself, it's our state when eating actually plays a huge role in a lot of those inflammatory aspects, or certainly the stress that we're placing on our gut. And that, as a business owner, if you're looking to improve your energy, it's probably not the extra Red Bull, it's probably not the extra coffee. It's an awareness to extract more energy from food, and we're going to be looking after our gut to get there.
Well, I love that you've shared such a simple but poignant example about how easy it is to become disconnected from our bodies in small ways that really turn into big ways, right?
Totally.
That
and this ties
mindfulness.
into, you've noticed this, I'm sure, in the legal field, you've noticed this in the business space, where corporate in general, there is such a leaning towards the rational mind. You need to be direct, you need to be focused, you need to be clear on your goals. Why would we get emotions in the way? That just makes things foggy, right? But if we're able to pay attention to that, it does give us a lot more awareness of ultimately the balancing act between the spreadsheet and the art of actually working out what that body needs. Because I think if it is purely rational, what we see a lot of the time is that it's very much a head on top of a meat suit. They're really not connected. And if we don't pay attention to that, we start to run into a lot of these issues. And certainly it comes through in the gut.
Oh my gosh. For a couple years, I remember, and this was after I was already dealing with thyroid. I had quite a journey to motherhood around a variety of things, but I remember not only feeling, for lack of a better word, like head heavy, like I just had a busy brain that, it's like, I got work to do. I got to just plow through this stuff. And it was clearly a disconnect from the body. And I relate so strongly to the analogy you just said, a head on a meat suit. And I think so often business, even digital online work like entrepreneurship, it can become that tunnel vision type of approach to work and business, where it is really easy for those the personal timeouts and the body care to be fit in the right ways, and in a way that is really truly mindful, where we tune back into our body and we make sure that we're taking deep breaths. My sister said to me the other day, I'm an expert at shallow breathing. And I was like, how many of us are experts at shallow breathing, right? So many.
90-95% of us, easily.
Oh, and like how awful is that, not only for our nervous system, but our digestion, like everything's connected. And so this whole more holistic approach to that body mind connection and looking deeper beyond just these simple inputs that we're doing for the body, I think is such an important conversation.
Totally. And I think even when, certainly your audience, I'm going to assume you're in that range where you're starting to put a leadership team in place, you're starting to hopefully work on the business rather than the business. Those sort of questions start coming up, right? You start to bring an awareness to, I probably worked super hard for a long time. My body's taken a bit of a beating.
Yes.
And now, what is there in life? What else am I looking at doing? And being able to look after your health, that one vehicle you have to actually enjoy it, starts to become more and more of that discussion. And if it coincides really nicely, because it's why am I so addicted to this reactivity of my day? How do I create a space to regulate better? That really does allow you to reshuffle what's first in your morning. What do you think about first thing to really create that overall meaning. Because I think many of us have got to a point where, if there is, a decent sized team in place, you are starting to really grow, or you have been, really in that spot for 5-10 years, personal energy management becomes something that becomes blatantly obvious, certainly to the business owner more than anyone else. Because if you don't have that, you lack vision, you lack leadership, you lack everything. And I think it really just becomes more of the picture.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so many folks, I mean, the stage of like really evaluating not only everything in their business from the standpoint of like, what do I absolutely have to be involved in versus, be a leader on, but so much of that correlates with how things are going in their personal life as well, right? I mean, a lot of folks, if you've got outside pressures like children, other time constraints that really have you evaluating those things, like the time is right. And I love what you just raised about personal energy management, looking at morning routines. I want to get to that next. Let's take a moment. I'd love to dig in and know a little bit more about your own personal journey and how you ended up in this space, and then also building your expertise in this space.
Yeah. So for me, coming out of uni, I, rather than going down the classic sort of corporate path, I started off a bit of personal training in a one of the bigger gyms in the city. It's sort of, just to get myself through uni, but it was an awareness of, there's clearly an obsession here with exercise. How do I maximize every aspect of this? And what that allowed me to do is obviously get a fair name for myself in regards to who I started working with. And it started to become more of these business owners, more of these corporate professionals that were fairly high up. And certainly being in the capital city of Wellington here, there was more and more of an awareness that was blatantly obvious to me that I could not ignore, which was, I can maximize every aspect of this person's training today, and it won't make a difference until we look at the stress and information you're walking through the door with. So knowing that I was from the start incredibly client-centric, of like, there's no point having this business unless we're absolutely crushing results and we're building something where they're getting value out of it. And what happened there is, rather than being 100% training, very military style, let's make sure you're sweating and hobbling out of the gym, it started to become 30% nutrition, 70% training, and then 50% lifestyle design, 50% training, to the point that, I'd have certain clients walk through the door, I'd hand them my headphones, get them to sit in the corner for 10 minutes and actually breathe, right? Like, they weren't going to get anything else out of the session, because you could see their brain darting around with no level of consciousness. Again, that meat suit, right? Let's connect the two again for that session to actually be effective. So that became a very natural progression for us, certainly online, because we started to expand from certainly just me at this point, but this expansion of just training to, let's really look at how we get your body back on your side. And if you are, anything beyond 35, you're probably starting to see levels of fatigue in certain parts of the day, not bouncing back from the night before, a level of foods don't quite give you the same energy you thought. And I think being able to apply some awareness to that bit of the picture certainly becomes more and more effective the more you demand out of your day. So as your business owners, as your busy professionals, getting awareness of that doesn't actually require, the next boot camp or the next 6-week diet that's putting you on 800 calories. That's actually an awareness of consciousness and building the skill set of health, which is going to be with you for the rest of your life. And it becomes, fundamentally, it's a discussion of, when you pay attention to these things, you're no longer running on the Prius engine. You can get back to a proper V8. You can actually start to really churn through your body fat. You can start to build that energy back. You have that engine really ticking along. And I think for a lot of people, this awareness of, carbs really stick to me. I have a sluggish metabolism. I'm noticing those dips in the afternoon. All of that ultimately comes back to a level of consciousness around how that body digests food, how it responds. So that was our natural progression online. So I've gone a bit off tangent here, but that was really the client-centric focus there. For me personally, it was I wasn't that aware to start with. It was very much an awareness that it was so blatantly obvious going through my own progression. If I was working with a client one-on-one in a gym, my training was great. I could eat on time. I could eat in between clients. There was no real massive stresses coming on. I then, put my fingers in all the pies with the startup communities and the growing certain businesses and just doing all the stuff, right? We're in that yes period of getting things off the ground. From there, I think there was a 3 or 4 year period where, we grew from literally just me to having 15 people on the team. So there was a pretty big awareness of, all of the things you talk about, being able to, rather than be just the person that has to do all the delivery, I now need to look at this marketing and sales. I need to have a leadership team in place. I need to realize that my training feels like shit because I'm not looking after myself because of how my brain felt all day, or was focusing on so many things. And just that simple awareness of, while working with clients and getting these results and having this discussion of, I need to pay attention to breathing more, it was because I was that hyperventilator. I was eating the right meals, but I was starting to realize that it was starting to feel a bit jiggly around the middle. Like, I'm training well, I'm eating well. Yes, I'm busy, but what does that matter? But my body's not responding, right? It really starts to force you to look at this a bit differently of, what are we truly missing here? So I'm really grateful for the journey we've gone through, because it became just as much an asset for me around how I conduct my day now, to make sure I can run the business, lead the team, and help these clients. But very much too, it's now we're really starting to get to the root cause of why so many business owners struggle with health, because it's not the dumbbells and calories, it's the awareness and skill set of health. And that's the missing link we dive into.
Well, I mean, a couple things stand out. One is that you've walked this on your own journey, right? Which I feel like is so important for people to hear. I think in so many ways, it makes the information so much more credible, because they realize, like, not only have you worked with clients on this, probably across the board, every client's had some version of this journey, but, you've walked it yourself. So you had mentioned, and you made a really great example out of even just the mindfulness brought to mealtime, sitting down, breathing, paying attention. What other things, like, I'd be interested in kind of a short list of, like, what are the little things that you began to notice and that contribute to this skill set of health, right? Things where people are coming to you and going, I'm doing all the things right. And you look at it and you're like, yeah, but here's all these other things you either are not addressing or haven't thought of. What are those things that are easy for people to miss that people regularly do miss?
Totally. If we're going to look at it through a nutritional lens, we could talk about the fact that people are massively under eating on the protein standpoint. That's not just muscle building, that's immune system, that's health, hormone regulation, all the stuff, right? It's not just having more water. It's, are you actually absorbing in that? Is there electrolyte balance we're looking at? Timing of food. If you're in your mid 30s, 40s, even 50s, fasting 16 hours a day is no longer it's more of an excuse for you to not think about yourself till lunchtime than it is maybe anchoring something in the morning. And I do see that become very helpful. So we can talk nuts and bolts all day around what that looks like nutritionally, but fundamentally, I think the big thing that got business owners and high functioning humans to where they are is this all or nothing attitude to really double down and get things done. And it's the one thing that I think hinders people from that health pursuit so much. And it's the simple fact, and I really want this to hit everyone. You don't give yourself permission to feel good at 80%. That's really the big one, is we're trying to improve nutrition, but we're not looking for 100%. We're looking to do the best we can in an imperfect world. What are those little tweaks and adjustments we can do? How can we give permission to ourselves for being a little bit better than yesterday rather than crushing it out of the park? And I think that's fundamentally what gets in the way of consistency, the stress, the guilt, the shame we give ourselves for not nailing it. Because when we put 100% into work, things change. When we aim for 100% in health, it doesn't quite work the same way.
Ugh. That is like a gut punch. I'm listening to that, and a couple things come to mind. One is this mindset of, like, I'm either on the wagon or off the wagon. Like, I either did my full workout or I followed like right now, you mentioned protein, right? Oh, yeah. One of the biggest lessons that I'm going through right now is around this concept of not getting enough protein. And for years, I've had adrenal fatigue, thyroid issues, right? And none of my doctors, even in the health space, naturopathic space, have been able to give me the right, like, here's the nutritional plan you should follow. And I've tried everything under the sun, right?
Yeah.
I've yet to get that right. But the one thing my doctor has me doing right now is aiming for 90 grams of protein a day. And I know that some people be like, nope, you need 150. That feels insane to me. Like, it feels really hard for me to get 90.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm living through some of the lessons that you're talking about right now. And also the guilt and the shame around like, oh my gosh, there went another day where I did not meet the water intake or the minimum steps or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so it's, yeah, it's both like a big blinking light and also like a bit of a relief to hear like, oh my gosh, what would it feel like to aim for 80%?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So
Like
there's a
this.
phrase I want to bring up here, which I never expected it to be like a thing,
Yeah.
because it was, fundamentally against my personality as well. Like I'm talking to myself here.
Yeah.
But one thing in our world that became a real thing is half-ass is better than no ass. And I was like, no, that can't be right. Like it needs to be all in. It need to be perfect. But it's really become a thing because it's just that permission to do 80%, And another example of this is I want you to walk for 10 minutes, right? How many people squirm at that? No, I need to find 2 hours. I need to put a rucksack on. I need to carry a 20-kilo dumbbell with me, right? How do I make it harder? But I'm like,
Yep.
if you just do 10 minutes every day, like you'll feel better. And it's just it's that action of getting your bum off the seat, getting yourself out the door. And if you want to go for 20 once you're out there, amazing. But just look for 10 and the opportunities come up.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I love that so much. Yes, I think that I'm sorry, this is a totally crude phrase and I'm going to use it. It's like that balls to the wall approach of like, if I can't, go get the hour in the gym or 2 hours in the gym or do a full like 45-minute walk, like I'm not going to start. And it's what keep people also being stuck or being like, okay, so today was a totally shitty day when it could have been a pretty good one if I'd given myself the flexibility to, like what you said, half-ass it or 80% it or whatever that means in that day.
Yep. 100%. And, even coming back to your personal scenario with the thyroid stuff, we see that with so many business owners, because what are the two things that really impact thyroid, unless there's, of course, autoimmune conditions involved, is stress and nutrient deficiencies, i.e. undereating, right? So both of those are tick for business owners.
Oh my gosh, it is so crazy. And the thing about having a thyroid or adrenal fatigue issue is like what your body does in response to that is put on weight. And to be an eater that's overweight is like such a painful, terrible experience.
And it's becoming so common, right? Because every 20-year-old on Instagram says you just need to be in a deficit. So everyone's like, okay, I need to eat less. And you get down to the point where things aren't working.
No, totally. And I've accidentally intermittently fasted like my entire adult life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So people are like, oh, just try intermittent fasting. I'm like, well, that's probably not the approach for me right this minute, but and then you can start to feel a little bit crazy, like trying all of these different strategies, but still not getting the whole picture right. Like a couple of years ago, I remember like being like, okay, I just need to do this HIIT training thing, and just hit it hard. It was the opposite of what I needed to do at the time, actually, right? So you can get a lot of advice in the marketplace that's not the right advice for you and your scenario.
And it's tough, like even being in the industry as long as I have, it's you question it every day because you find out that you need to be doing your zone 2 cardio for more than 30 minutes, otherwise it doesn't tack into your fat loss or whatever it might be. And you keep putting these rules everywhere and you start to be like, oh, well, unless I do 2 hours up the mountain every morning, what's the point, And that's the space that I think we've got to now in the information age of there's no lack of information. It's very much relevance and context that we're now looking for. And I think that's why it's so enjoyable to talk to, busy humans that are business owners in that at least over 35, 40, 50 space where the body's not working the same way. If we've started to go through hormonal changes, both male and female, getting an awareness of what that looks like, whether it's on the male side of, testosterone sort of dropping slowly and certainly the insulin sensitivity becoming an issue, that is something that we really starting to kick them in the bum around 50. Whereas females certainly going through perimenopause that can last up to 9 years becomes a bit of a punch in the face to, again, the same kind of thing, a level of insulin sensitivity. We can dive into female hormones if you want. We can go so deep there, but an awareness of how the body just simply doesn't use nutrients like it used to. And you start to, that breakfast that used to make me feel really good after I went for a run now just makes me feel tired all morning. I'm forgetting my keys. I don't know what to focus on. That's all very impactful, not just to your work, but your overall quality of life. So fundamentally, if you're putting on body fat and under eating, it's tough. It does become a complete shift in what everybody is telling you, which is you actually need to eat more and do less. So there's not this massive stress response on your body. You need to start fueling the change you want to look for. And as we talked about before, this is why we talk about building back the engine. It's the best visual analogy I have of actually burning more fuel rather than trying to burn it on 2 lettuce leaves and an almond.
Oh yeah. I'm so glad that people get to hear this. I think there are so many folks that, first of all, beating themselves up for not figuring it out, not getting it right so far, right? Or have tried the wrong strategies, or are starting to recognize like stuff is slipping. I've got to do something about it. Where do you typically start? Like if you were working with a typical client, are there major areas that you start in? Like how do you get those early wins for clients so that people start to feel like, okay, I'm creating some momentum, right? Even if it's just doing some small things. Where do you look first?
4 things. 1, a 10-minute walk every day. Number 2, are you getting greens with 2 meals a day? Right? Because that's multifaceted. It's not just, are you having greens? Are you actually sitting down for a meal, or is everything on the rush? Right?
And what do you say to the folks that are like, oxalates and spinach is terrible and blah, blah, blah?
Yeah. If everything is spinach, then there's not a lot of variation. I like to look at it through the lens of let's count colors, not calories. Becomes a nice way to look at just more like vibrancy and color overall. Oxalates and lectins and all the things there absolutely have its role, but it's kind of like the icing on the cake of what's the actual bigger issue, right? I think unless there's some severe gut issues, you're not going to notice the couple of extra, toxins that are coming through from your spinach when what you've done is remove the deep fried, chips that are now causing a lot more issues, right? That's a lot more toxic load in the body. And unless there are severe gut issues, I think there's some fantastic experts that are bringing awareness to these greens. But unless there's significant issues, which we certainly work with quite a bit, it becomes more of an awareness to fundamentally we're getting back to whole foods. We're getting back to having a bit more greens on that plate.
And starting there as a place to analyze then how does this go for a person?
Totally. Yeah. The third one, which is one no one wants to hear, but I don't care, is alcohol. Remove it for a month. See how you go. And not only is that going to make an impact from certainly being able to be much easier at dropping body fat because you're not storing the food while you get through the alcohol. It's also, for me, much more important to give yourself and prove to yourself that you can do a month without it, because so many people now, it's ultimately the only way they're coping with life, and that's a problem. And if we can bring awareness to this perpetual cycle of I wake up with caffeine and I calm down with alcohol or something else, it becomes a bit more of a problem than simply the caloric intake from alcohol. It becomes more of an emotional regulation aspect, which I think fundamentally is what we're talking about here around paying attention to your digestion and your breathing and your stress throughout the day. Is if the only way that you can take the edge off is by smashing back a couple glasses of whiskey, that's the big issue, right? So alcohol was multifaceted. That's why I'd take it out. And then we can have more of a discussion of improving your relationship with alcohol and with even the binges and things that would come through food wise. It all comes back down to a level of emotional resilience and tolerance.
So huge. Well, and I think the benefit of being in the information age is we have study after study that now shows impacts, based on alcohol on brain health, brain size, sleeping, hormones, right? None of it really good. So in case people needed the evidence, it's out there on why, definitely remove it, or at very most like minimize it as much as you can. But certainly I think in trying these changes, yes.
Yep. So those become 3 that just focus on, as we talked about, the physical, digestive, and psychological health. All 3 of those are focused around those 3, because it's not just about the greens, right? It's about what your day needs to involve for that greens to happen. And for most of us, we'll go flat out till lunchtime, then be like, well, what's for lunch? What's close, right? And then we've already lost the battle. So being able to look at those components of how they do actually infiltrate other areas of your life in order for you to hit them regularly, that becomes the point. That becomes the foundation that we can build from. And that really allows you to feel good at 80%. It just allows those, let's nail these first, and then the fancy stuff can come later.
Well, and those also feel like, from the standpoint of making a simple decision, those actually feel simple, not
Yeah.
easy, right? But a
Yeah.
simple decision like, okay, 10-minute walk,
Yeah.
putting some greens on my plate, right? At least twice a day, a good dose of
Yeah.
greens. Alcohol, for me, simple decision and easy. For a lot of people, not easy, but
Mm.
simple. It's a clear, like, and from a health standpoint, big wins. So what's the
Yeah.
fourth one? I think, did you say 4 things?
Yeah. Fourth one, you got me on this one. The fourth one is, what do we put in? It's usually getting a meal in before 10 o'clock. And I think that's to really do a bit of a nudge
For those of you
towards.
not watching the video, I stuck out my tongue. I am drinking, by the way, this smoothie, which is high protein, has
Yep.
blueberries, has green powders, not actual greens because I was out. But this is my first meal of the day, and you can see how far into it I am. And we are 3 o'clock. I will just say it. I'm failing today. I am less than half-assing this today. That's how hard it is for me some days to get a meal in. And I clearly have so much room to do it better. And I'm still trying to figure out how to build those skills.
Yeah. So the first three would be super relevant,
Mhm.
but the last one is very much I'm certainly not anti-fasting. We've done areas of that can be super helpful, but the realization that, again, you can get stuck in the information age of, we need to do at least 16 hours to really hit these magical autophagy benefits. No, we don't. Like, it's happening throughout the night. We're all fasting for at least 10 to 12 hours, right? It's more a case of how long does that window have to happen before that we're needing to introduce food. And more, essentially when we're working with more of our clients in the 40s and 50s, there's an awareness towards this muscle-centric medicine, right? Dr. Gabrielle Lyons talks about a lot, is this concept of prioritizing and maintaining a level of muscle around your day. And that really comes back to the whole under-eating, not having enough protein part of the picture. But if we're not taking the time to address anchoring a meal in before that 10 o'clock or 3 o'clock, it becomes an awareness of, as you mentioned before, most people don't get the meal in because it's not actually a health benefit. They've just justified it as a health benefit later, right? And I think being able to say that, hey, if you find that fasting works for you, amazing, keep doing it. But if you're noticing that you're under eating, your energy's low, and things aren't functioning well, being able to do something different might be a nice way to get a different result. And it just allows a bit of a different discussion and opportunity to have 3 or 4 decent meals of a higher protein option so that you can hit that 100 grams or 150 grams in the day and build from there.
Totally. Well, and I think in my own lessons related to like female hormone health, one thing I'm realizing is like the under eating has contributed to increased cortisol, right? And part of that getting that early meal in is to satiate your system and tell it to calm down. Like, you're not starving, food is coming your way. And also another opportunity to get that protein in. So it's like intellectually you can know that, and still, between like waking up and taking my thyroid meds and having to wait a while and then shifting to kids and getting kids out the door, it can be 10 o'clock and my first call is happening, and there goes my morning, and then it's boom, boom, so it also does create, I think, the need to recognize how intentional we need to be to make even these small changes happen. And so on that point, how do you help your clients build that stuff into their routines? Or like if me, if they're struggling even to do one of them in a consistent manner, is it just like, do you have because partly where I see you fitting in rewiring the brains of your clients is like, health and fitness coaching, but also like personal coaching.
Totally. Yeah, it's performance coaching at the end of the day, but
Totally.
because you're looking at the athlete behind the to-do list. And ultimately, I think I actually heard this from a friend recently, and I really liked it, which is, when you think about yourself as an athlete, you just have a higher standard for yourself. You look after yourself a bit more because it's, what do athletes do? They need to show up on the pitch better tomorrow. So they're going to feel their body a bit better. They're going to go to bed on time. There's just those little things that make a huge difference. And the really big, scary thing about business is that, with sport, you have rules, you have finish lines, and you have clear boundaries of when you've won or lost. In business, you have no rules, you have no finish line, and you don't know if you've won or lost. It's continual, right? Where the only way to lose is to stop. So all of those things just tied into this never-ending sort of always-on culture of 10 different ways to message us means that we're just bathing in a level of anxiety, even if you don't feel it that way, that is coming back to that level of cognitive load. And I think when we are able to anchor that discussion of thinking of ourselves like an athlete, it really just comes from a place of, it's a sexier way of saying, look, let's be a little bit more self-compassionate. Let's look at what are the things we can do in our day to actually look after us so we're still here tomorrow. And to answer your question of how I'd approach that is, one, usually this discussion, right? All the things you care about right now, all the things that only you can do. If you're not here, someone else picks up that bucket and carries on with it. You're just not that important. And that becomes a really nice power move in regards to changing the discussion of how many things you're so important that nobody else can do. Because when you're not here, when you're in the hospital bed with a second heart attack, someone else just picked up that activity, right?
Totally.
And I think that's a biggie. But once we do that, now we can actually just have a discussion around your calendar, which is, there's one of you and you've got two calendars, i.e. personal and business.
Yep.
And when you have the work meeting at 10 o'clock, you get it done. When you don't have your lunch booked in, you don't get it done. So, that awareness that I personally, if I look at my calendar now, I've got 9 to 10 hours on average booked out a day, and none of it feels structured. It's self-care. It's an awareness of, I've got my workout in there, I've got my lunch in there, I've got my afternoon walk in there, and then I've got all my meetings on top of that. But those other things don't move. And that becomes a really nice shift that usually, hopefully, has become an aha for you listening to this already, but more of a, hopefully something that stays with you over the next couple of weeks, and see how many opportunities you actually have to fit you in that you're not choosing to.
I love that. Well, and even what you said about thinking of yourself as an athlete, like for folks that are listening, there's probably a fair number that used to think of themselves as an athlete, right? And I'm speaking for myself in this regard as well. And then at some point, whether it's the path to parenthood, whether it's a traumatic experience in your body, like there are many ways that we can get disconnected from our bodies or lose that identity as an athlete. Or maybe you never had it, right? Maybe you were never a person that really had to think about that because health came pretty naturally, right? To the young. I mean, what do they say? Youth is wasted on the young. Physically, you never had a challenge. And then, right, 40s, 50s, it starts to catch up with you and you realize like you've got to do things differently. But I do love that mindset shift around, if you think of yourself as an athlete, like how do you show up differently? Because you certainly would. And this is the importance of really any type of coaching, is that it does start with identity. Right.
So one part of that story I didn't mention before, and I'll share this simply because I think it's helpful to the discussion, which is this motorbike helmet that I have here was a crash I had about 3 years ago now. And that was that exact discussion, right? Where I shifted away from feeling like the athlete because I fundamentally broke my body. Things were not working. I basically tore a whole bunch of muscles off. I couldn't use my shoulder. I went through 2 or 3 different surgeries trying to repair things. And in that time period, I was like, well, I've got too much to do. So I'm going to focus on just being always on, always working, always doing the to-do lists. And my physical and mental health really started to deteriorate. I was getting to a point where I was seeing burnout around the corner. I was seeing an immense amount of fatigue through our morning, where I was having that extra 2, 3, 4 cups of coffee to make it happen. And that's all numbing, right? That's all just, it doesn't matter. My body can keep moving. And I'm not thinking about what I need to nourish this thing. And being able to go back through that switch and get back to, the reason I felt good, 10 years ago was not because I was training harder. It was because I had the capacity to train harder, which is all of these parts of self-compassion, of just like that little insertion of a walk, that little insertion of lunch when it should be lunch. Those shifts I went through again personally, because it was a shift away from what was working really good, how I conducted myself on a day-to-day level, and where I just inserted myself back in because I cared about me.
Well, and it's such a powerful reminder that I think part of the human experience is lessons like that, right?
Yeah.
Shaking things up because we need to be more mindful about something. And also just a reminder of how frequently that happens. I think a lot of times, humans can feel really isolated in these hard physical journeys that we go through. And like, I know for me, the path to motherhood was completely unexpected from the standpoint of how hard it was. 7 years, 7 pregnancies, multiple near-death experiences. I mean, I remember there were times being pregnant where I was like, and I'm a super adventurous person, I was not scheduling weekends. I'd had so many repeat experiences of needing to go in for emergency blood draws or emergency procedures that saved my life, that I remember feeling like I can't even travel a far distance from the hospital in case something goes so dramatically wrong. And that was such a weird, like, disenfranchising period for me, realizing how much independence I felt like I had lost. And truthfully, post children, I've got 2 kiddos now. It's been really hard to regain that confidence that I had pre-babies in my body. Right. So I think there's a lot of folks that in their own version, whether it's a traumatic injury, whether it's, I mean, you even talk about young folks who are having strokes or something that damages, their brain, or they're functioning temporarily or whatever. There's so many ways that we can experience this and have to rebuild. And, your description of how it needs to be so intentional and scheduling ourselves back into our own schedule, treating ourselves like an athlete, even when we don't feel like one, is the key.
Yeah. So I want to leave you with one last thing here around how you do that, right? If you say that you're an athlete and you don't believe it, this is what you need to do, which is, rather than the emotions, focus on your actions. I.e., if you go to the gym 3 times a week, you're a gym person. If you get up and go for a walk in the morning, you're a morning person, right? It allows opportunity for actions to become a new level of confidence. And I think for so many people, they have a lack of confidence because they do the big shit at work, but they don't look after themselves with the small promise they keep breaking. And I think that becomes a really cool place to start, of what are those little things in my day that I keep promising and breaking? What are those things I could actually now follow up on? And confidence starts to build. You start to notice that everything in between the little things and the big things start to improve.
Oh my gosh, that's like a ding, ding, ding. Say it louder for the kids in the back, right? What is that small promise to myself that I keep breaking? So important. I think so many of us have a list of those running in our heads right now, right? We know exactly what they are. Olly, you're amazing. I love that you are an expert in this stuff. And I can tell by the way that you talk about it, how much you care and how much your clients benefit from your work. Couple of questions, and out of respect for your time, we'll get people directed in the right way. But where do you show up online, and do you like for folks to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm happy to help anyone from the space. As you said, I'm super interested in the space because business in itself is fascinating and there's so many moving parts. But when we bring the human to it and we bring an awareness to how we tolerate it, how we block it, how we are able to do it for a really long time, I find that even more interesting. So, super happy to connect. I think Instagram or Facebook, just literally search Olly Wood would be the easiest place to find me. And I'd love to, if there's anything that's popped out from today's podcast, I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, perfect. We will definitely share your social handles. We'll share your website. Again, if you're listening, Olly's company is Body Reset. We're going to share the link to that and to where he shows up online at the show notes page, which you can find at legalwebsitewarrior.com/podcast. And again, look for Olly Wood's episode. Olly, I forget, was there something on yes, you had a 5-day reset challenge, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? It lives on your main website.
Yeah, if you just go to bodyreset.online, that's our main website. You can find tons of stuff on there, whether you're a podcaster, whether you're more videos, more articles, you can find it all. But I think the 5-day reset would be a great place to start, because everything we went through today was focused on how we create relevant, actionable change based on the little simple stuff you can do every single day that really does, build up to you bringing back that confidence, that momentum, that energy. So if you want simple steps on what that looks like and help me guide you through that for free, simply just go to our website. There's a male and female version, just because we want to nuance it a little bit from a female standpoint and hormonal standpoint. That becomes a fantastic way to put an action step in place. Don't put this off till January. Actually anchor some things in so you can feel great. And I think it becomes, we've had thousands of people go through that, tons of great reviews on just how simple it is and how much better I feel. So if you've got, 5 minutes to look at that, I think that makes a significant difference to your day.
I love that. So definitely check that out. That is on their main website, which we will share. Olly, first of all, thank you so much for being here. I consider this one of the most important conversations that we can be having in our lives, is about how we really achieve optimal health
Mm.
and also create our businesses in a way that supports our life, not the other way around, right? And this is a huge component of that. What final either thought, action step, takeaway would you like to leave people with? I know you've already given us so much, but I want to give you the chance to share anything else that comes to mind.
Sure. One last thing I'd love to say is, it might sound random, but an awareness of, if we put a hamster on a hamster wheel, right, and we track how much health benefits they're getting out of that because they chose to do it, it becomes clearly something that they should keep doing. It's healthy, it's beneficial. But then if we attach that hamster wheel to another one that automatically moves when he does, and we put a second hamster on that wheel so that they're forced to exercise when the first one does, instead of getting all the health benefits, we get all the stress detriments. So what I want you to take away from this is, even if you're doing the stuff, the big thing here is you get to, you don't have to. And if you shift that mentality, I think you start to really explore and give yourself permission to feel good. And it's nothing that's being forced on you.
Oh my gosh, what a dramatic example. Just demonstrating the power of choice, right?
Yeah.
And recognizing like we get to choose this rather than essentially forcing ourselves to feel further stressed by healthy choices.
Yeah.
Olly, thank you. I so appreciate you. I'm really looking forward to sharing this conversation with our audience and following up. Maybe there's a part two. I'm super intrigued by what you said specifically about female hormones, in part because, as we all know, the health and fitness industries, like nearly 100% of the studies are done on men, not on women. Yeah. And so I feel like even now we're learning so much more about women's health, women's hormone health, how we respond to certain things that we just haven't had before.
Yeah, 100%. Happy to go down there, even if it's our main hormone expert specialist coming in to talk about, we could do that too. But
awesome.
I think, awareness of how this applies to not just the more information piece, but if you're going through this specific shift in your life, or you're seeing these changes, hopefully this just allows you to give yourself permission to remove a bit of noise and just focus on the actual, go through this again, go through the 5-day challenge, get an awareness of just anchoring in the daily stuff every day, and realize that when you feel better because you went for a walk, it's something that you do every day. If you forced yourself to go for a walk because you didn't enjoy it, you're not going to do it again. And that fundamentally is a consistency. So I think that'll make a difference.
No, I love it. Well, I appreciate you so much, and we will be in touch.
Thanks, Heather. That was great.